The knock on my door wasn't a polite rap. It was the kind of pounding that makes your blood go cold, that rattles the windows and sets off the dog. I wasn't expecting anyone, and sure as hell not a full lineup of wannabe cops standing on my porch. Their uniforms looked convincing enough at a glance. Dark shirts with shiny badges pinned just a little too crooked, tactical belts hanging heavy with plastic-looking gear. And at the center of this absurd parade was her Karen, the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood, puffed up like a parade balloon, hands on her hips, and a smirk that could curdle milk. "Open up. This is the HOA police," one of the men barked, his voice gravelly but uncertain, as if he didn't quite believe his own line. My hand hovered near the door, but I didn't open it. Instead, I flicked the deadbolt and spoke through the wood. "The what police?" Karen stepped closer, and I could practically hear her huff from behind the peephole. "Don't play dumb. You violated community codes too many times. Today, you're under arrest." She said the word arrest like she was savoring it, her voice dripping with the satisfaction of someone who thought she'd finally won. Now, I've dealt with Karen's nonsense for months. Petty fines taped to my door, complaints about my truck, threats about my fence, even shouting matches in front of the mailbox. But this was a new level of crazy. My pulse pounded in my ears, not with fear, but with disbelief and anger. Arrest me? On my own property? By fake cops who couldn't even match their shoelaces? I steadied my voice. "You realize impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime, right?" There was silence on the other side of the door for a beat. Then Karen cackled, a shrill, ugly laugh that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Oh, please. You're just some stubborn homeowner. These men have authority here. Step out, or we'll come in." That was the moment I decided to flip the script. They had no idea who they were messing with. I wasn't just some stubborn homeowner. I was Special Agent Daniel Brooks, FBI, and Karen had just brought her circus right to my stage. I unlocked the door slowly and pulled it open. The late afternoon sun spilled across my porch, illuminating their half-baked uniforms and Karen's triumphant grin. She pointed at me like she was directing a stage play. "That's him. Take him in." The so-called officers stepped forward. That was when I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my leather badge holder, and flipped it open. The golden letters gleamed in the sunlight like a blade catching fire. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut through their bravado. The men froze. Their eyes darted from my badge to each other, and their tough guy act began to crumble. Karen, though, doubled down. "He's faking. He's bluffing. Don't let him scare you." I let a small smile curl on my lips. "Funny thing, Karen, that's exactly what I was about to say about you." The weight of my words hung in the air. The fake cops shifted uncomfortably, and one of them, the tallest with a cheap mustache that looked like it belonged in a Halloween aisle, muttered, "You didn't say he was FBI." Karen whipped around to glare at him, her face blotchy red. "It doesn't matter. He broke HOA rules. He owes us fines. He needs to be taught a lesson." That was when I pulled my phone from my pocket, already recording. This whole stunt is being documented. Impersonation of law enforcement carries up to 3 years in federal prison. And conspiring to commit fraud? That adds more time. The fake cops looked like they'd seen a ghost. One of them took a cautious step back. Karen lunged forward instead, her finger jabbing the air. "You can't turn this on me. I'm the president of this community. These men answer to me." I tilted my head, studying her like a specimen under a microscope. "Do you hear yourself, Karen? You just admitted in front of witnesses that you organized a fake police operation to intimidate a federal agent. Do you understand what kind of fire you've just walked into?" For a second, the only sound was the cicadas buzzing in the trees. Then came a new noisier car rolling up, crunching gravel under its tires. My backup, right on time. A black SUV pulled into view, the doors swinging open in practiced unison. 2 real FBI agents stepped out, weapons holstered but authority radiating from every stride. Karen's smirk melted. Her eyes widened, her bravado faltering for the first time. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. These men are just volunteers. It's community enforcement." The taller fake cop threw his hands up. "We're done. I'm not going to jail for this." He backed away, practically tripping over himself. The others followed suit, peeling off like rats abandoning a sinking ship. But Karen wasn't ready to sink, not yet. She puffed up her chest again and shouted, You can't arrest me. I'm protecting the neighborhood. One of my colleagues stepped forward, snapping handcuffs from his belt with a metallic click that sliced through her tantrum. Ma'am, you're under arrest for impersonation, conspiracy, and harassment of a federal officer. Her face contorted, twisted between rage and terror. No, this isn't fair. He's the criminal, not me. She thrashed as they cuffed her, screaming about bylaws and neighborhood order, her voice breaking under the weight of her collapse. And as the agents led her away, neighbors began peeking out from behind curtains and cracked doors. Phones lifted, cameras clicked. The queen of control, the woman who'd bullied this street for years, was being paraded in disgrace for all to see. But just when I thought the curtain was closing on Karen's final act, a voice rose from the crowd. That's not the first time she's pulled something like this. An older man, Mr. Ruiz from 3 houses down, stepped into the open. He carried a worn notebook, edges frayed, pages stuffed with receipts and letters. I've been keeping records. She's been scamming us for years. Fake fines, fake dues. I didn't know how far it went until now. A ripple of shock swept through the neighbors. Heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire. Karen's downfall wasn't just about today's stunt, it was about years of lies unraveling in real time. I turned to Mr. Ruiz, nodding. We'll need every bit of that evidence. He handed me the notebook with trembling hands, relief washing over his weathered face. That was the twist no one expected. Karen's empire wasn't just crumbling, it was being set ablaze from within, fueled by the truth she'd buried under intimidation. And in that moment, watching the false queen dragged off in cuffs while the community she'd terrorized finally found its voice, I knew this wasn't just justice for me. It was justice for all of us. The days that followed were a blur of sirens, paperwork, and stunned neighbors whispering like bees around a hive. Karen had always strutted through the streets with her head high, barking orders, doling out fake fines, knocking on doors to intimidate anyone who dared defy her. But now the queen bee was caged, her honeycomb empire unraveling faster than even I expected. Mr. Ruiz's notebook became the fuse that lit the bonfire. He had dates, names, and dollar amounts scrawled across every page, a map of deceit that stretched back nearly 5 years. HOA dues that had never made it to the county records, fines invented on a whim, even fraudulent letters threatening foreclosure. She hadn't just annoyed people, she had robbed them, lied to them, and stripped them of peace in their own homes. Neighbors who once whispered about her behind closed doors now came forward, trembling but determined. Mrs. Henderson admitted she'd paid nearly $2,000 in noise violation fines because her grandson practiced the trumpet in her garage. Mr. Patel revealed Karen had threatened to demolish his shed unless he coughed up $300 in permit fees. Each story added another brick to the wall, closing in on her. The federal case built itself. What started as a petty impersonation stunt ballooned into wire fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy charges. The more evidence we pulled, the clearer it became. Karen hadn't just been power-hungry. She had built a criminal network under the mask of suburban order, hiding her greed behind the phrase community standards. But Karen was never one to go down quietly. Her lawyer spun wild defenses in the courtroom, claiming she had been misunderstood, that she only wanted to maintain harmony in the neighborhood. She painted herself as a martyr, a woman burdened with responsibility, punished for trying to keep order in a chaotic world. And then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. Midway through the trial, a young man stood up from the gallery. His voice cracked as he shouted, "She's lying. She forced me to help her." Heads whipped around, the courtroom buzzing. The judge's gavel slammed, demanding silence, but the damage was done. The young man, his name was Tyler, was one of the fake officers from that day at my doorstep. Only now, with Karen cornered, he turned on her. Through tears and shame, Tyler confessed that Karen had manipulated him and others with promises of easy money and the illusion of power. She'd told them the HOA had authority to enforce laws and that anyone who resisted deserved punishment. For months, he played along, too scared to back out, until the day they knocked on my door and found themselves staring at the real badge of justice. The courtroom air thickened with the weight of his confession. Karen's face twisted, the mask cracking under the spotlight of betrayal. She screeched that Tyler was lying, that he was weak, but no one believed her anymore. Not when the pattern was so clear, not when every neighbor's story aligned with his. When the verdict finally came, it was like a thunderclap splitting the sky. Guilty. On every count. The gavel came down, and Karen's empire of control shattered into dust. She would serve time in federal prison, not for days or months, but for years. The same woman who once handed out petty punishments like candy was now facing the sharp edge of justice herself. But what mattered even more than Karen's collapse was what came after. The neighborhood changed. At first it was awkward, people stepping outside like survivors after a storm, blinking in the sunlight of new freedom. Without Karen's watchful eye, the air felt lighter, less poisoned by fear. Kids played basketball in driveways again. Front porches blossomed with chairs and laughter instead of warning notes. The fences she once turned into boundaries became places where neighbors leaned and talked, finally seeing each other as allies instead of suspects. We held a community meeting, the first real one anyone could remember. No bylaws, no threats. Just people sitting in folding chairs under the glow of the community center lights, voices shaking but hopeful. We talked about how to protect ourselves from ever falling under someone like her again. We created a real council, one where every family had a say, where transparency ruled over secrecy. And for the first time, I saw my neighbors not as pawns on Karen's board, but as a community messy, flawed, but real. At that meeting, Mr. Ruiz stood and read aloud a letter he'd written. His voice trembled as he thanked everyone for finally speaking up, for proving that no one person, no matter how loud or cruel, could silence the truth forever. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. For me, it wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about watching ordinary people find their courage, about turning fear into defiance, silence into voices, despair into action. Karen thought she could control us with intimidation, but she underestimated the power of unity. Sometimes I think back to that first knock on my door, to the sight of those fake cops lined up like actors in a bad play. It could have ended differently. If I hadn't opened that door with my badge in hand, if my neighbors hadn't finally stepped out of the shadows, she might still be ruling the street with lies and fear. But justice has a way of finding cracks in even the strongest walls. And once it breaks through, there's no rebuilding the old empire of control. So here we are, a neighborhood scarred but stronger, carrying the lesson that sometimes the real enemy isn't outside the gates but the one pretending to guard them. And to you reading this, I'll leave you with the same question we asked ourselves that night. When someone abuses power in your community, do you stay silent or do you stand up and take it back? What do you think, was Karen's punishment fair, or did she deserve even more? Share your thoughts. Was this justice or just the beginning?